Okay, well, we've arrived at Hill 60, which is not quite what I thought it was. Where we came before many years ago, there were a whole series of trenches, but this doesn't seem to be like that at all. This is a memorial to the Queen Victoria Rifles, Australians. It's all very craterous, where the area was totally bombarded and everything. Very peaceful this morning. Wasn't very peaceful in 1914 to 18, that's for sure. Sheer number of craters. The area, huge bombardments. Another memorial. In memoriam of officers and men of the 1st Australian Tunnelling Company, who gave their lives in the mining and defensive operations of Hill 60 between 1915 and 1918. This monument replaces the original erected in April 1919 by their comrades in arms. All sorts of tunnelling being done. And here's the history of the tunnelling company. During the First World War, armies engaged in tunnelling detonated explosive charges underneath the opposing trench lines. The first such action was by German forces in Givenchy in France in December 1914. The 1st Australian Tunnelling Company were here in August 1915. And on the 7th of November 1916, the 1st Australian Tunnelling Company took over, tasked with the main tunnels and explosives. The Australians were not used to tunnelling in clay, but working in 4-day shifts they completed a drainage and ventilation shaft, which became engaged in the underground war. Both sides attempted to locate opposing tunnels. They set up listening posts in the shallows about 3 metres below the surface. What an horrendous job. A nerve-wracking job, it says here, as shelling could collapse the post and bury men alive. When enemy tunnels were detected, often in the deeps about 8 metres down, tunnellers would dig towards them and set off explosive charges. Good grief. In April 1917, the Germans raided the British trenches but failed to locate the tunnel entrances. Meanwhile, the Australians tunnelled even deeper, risking carbon monoxide poisoning and flooding to get underneath the German tunnels. Germans were detected digging towards them, but before they could reach it, the British mines were detonated, which signalled the start of the Battle of Messines. Approximately 30 men of the 1st Australian Tunnelling Company lost their lives at Hill 60. Some were killed in action, while others died in accidents or from illness. The single worst loss occurred on Anzac Day, the 25th of April 1917, when a detonator exploded and brought down an underground headquarters, killing 3 men and suffocating 7 others. A member of the rescue party also died. Over the course of the war, the company lost more than 90 men in active service. So I think they deserve a memorial. More than that, I think they deserve our utmost respect. Okay, so this Hill 60 in December 1914 was the French front line. It had changed by January 1915, it had become the British front line. 2 large craters were detonated up on the hill. 2,400 kilogram bombs were detonated to blow up the enemy positions. This is the Western Front Way. Memorial here in memory of the Great War, the 14th Light Division, or the 11th Infantry Brigade, King's Royal Rifle Corps, Rifle Brigade, 1st Divisional Cycle Company, but that was an interesting thing, ammunition column. Picture of some fine fellow here, Lance Corporal Michael Dignan, Machine Gun Corps by the look of him. We have finally arrived at Hill 62, which is Sanctuary Wood, where there are trenches that you can actually go down with in a museum. Bit of a tortuous journey to find, but we've found it. These are the trenches, I don't know whether these are original trenches or not. Huge craters and everything else. Well worth a visit though. See what life was like on the in the trenches. Trench system is pretty muddy just down here in this section. See some of the duck boards here, the mud that they would have had to work in. Another example of the mud and the blood. This morning we've come to a special place called Zoodshot. I had an uncle who I never knew, who on the 28th of May 1940, on the retreat to Dunkirk, was killed near here. Albert Christopher Newmarch. We won't forget him, will we? He's buried here with 6 of his mates and numerous other people that were killed around that time. Albert and his mates were on the retreat to Dunkirk, as I've said, and he was killed by a German artillery shell, aged 21. The following day, the 29th of May, his regiment, the Royal Berkshires, what was left of them, made it through to Dunkirk, and many got back home, but poor Albert didn't. Just going to go and try and find Albert's stone. Been here before some years ago. Busy road today. There are 60 headstones here, together with 2 headstones for 2 Frenchmen. Just taking a look here. Private A.R. Pike, Royal Berkshire Regiment, 29th of May, age 19, no age was it. Lincolnshire Regiment, Royal Berkshires, H.G. Brown, Royal Berkshires, all Albert's mates. All lying peacefully here today in the bright sunshine in April 2026. All young men. These are here from the Suffolks, Soldier of the War, Suffolk Regiment.
18 to 39 of them.
But here at the very front we have 2 Frenchmen known unto France. Okay, so here we are, parked as what would appear in the middle of nowhere, but in actual fact we're parked at a place called Wormhout, which is in France, and we're at the La Plaine de Bois, or La Plaine au Bois, which is the site of a massacre of British soldiers, 80 in total, on the 28th of May 1940 by the Waffen-SS. They were British soldiers surrendered to the Germans on this site, and they were herded into a barn by the Germans and held prisoner. Now, bearing in mind the British and 2 Frenchmen were prisoners of war, but the Germans thought otherwise, and the Waffen-SS, the first Standarten Adolf Hitler, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, were notoriously cruel German crack troops. They decided that they did not want to have any British prisoners of war. So, with the British, the 80 British soldiers and the 2 Frenchmen herded inside the barn, the Germans decided that they would throw stick grenades through into the barn with a view to killing all the occupants. And basically that's what happened. Having used the stick grenades, they then set fire to the barn to finish off those that remained inside. There were several survivors, fortunately, but most died on that tragic day. We're now going up to the memorial itself, where I think there's a replica of the barn. This is a replica of the barn that existed on that fateful day in 1940. To the glory of God and in memory of the men of the Royal Warwickshire and Cheshire Regiment and the Royal Artillery, who on the 28th of May 1940 were massacred in a barn near this spot, and also of the men who were murdered as they were being marched to the barn. We will remember them. This memorial is erected by the Birmingham branch of the Dunkirk Veterans Association. This memorial of all the trees was set up in 1973. The survivors of the fatal massacre came here in May 1973 at the anniversary when these trees were planted. So the barn that we've just looked at was not the original, because that burnt down. These trees represent the people that were actually killed here, and just looking at this one, for example, we've got Stanley Moore, who was a sergeant in the 2nd Royal Warwicks. Just moving on slightly, we've got Gerald Nagle, Corporal, Royal Warwicks. Coming over into the outside queue, we have Alfred Gisborne, Corporal, 2nd Royal Warwicks. And the list goes on, and the trees go on. Each tree symbolises a person that was massacred here by the evil Waffen SS. And at the end of the war, the leader of the Waffen SS, who was a General Monker, was exonerated, and nobody ever stood trial for this despicable massacre. But a sobering sight to see today in the bright sunshine in April 2026. Here is a tablet that actually mentions what exactly happened. Here at the end of the afternoon of Tuesday the 28th of May 1940, the SS under Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler with Obergruppenführer Sepp Dietrich in charge, and specifically his 2nd Battalion, controlled by Hauptsturmführer Wilhelm Mohnke, had killed, in spite of the Geneva Convention, many dozens of British prisoners of the 2nd Battalion, the Royal Warwickshire Regiment, Cheshire Regiment and the Royal Artillery, as well as a French soldier in charge of a military depot in a nearby farm. Before being made prisoners and brought to this retired cowshed by force, these martyrs fought bravely against superior Nazi forces, protecting the place of Wormhout and so helping the evacuation of the Allies at Dunkirk a day later. Just takes your breath away. There was a commission of inquiry into the war crimes that were committed here, but as I said earlier, nobody was ever held to account. This is the blockhouse at Ypres, where V2 rockets were being made until the Allies bombed it in 1944 and reduced it to just a site for liquid oxygen. A V2 rocket never left this site, and it would have done if the Allies hadn't bombed it. Slave labour built it, and as we go inside you'll just see the sheer volume of concrete that was involved in the process. Okay, we're now in the site. This is the entrance coming from the ticket office, and you can see here 2 wagons that would have brought in slave labour to the site. Another 25-pounder field gun. site is well laid out with various audio bits en route. This is a narrow gauge railway that was constructed by the slave labour to bring in supplies, concrete, wood, sand, cement, you name it, it was brought in. The site must have been an absolute hive of activity during the course of building. When I came here before, but it was a few years ago, you could actually go in the blockhouse itself. Oh, it looks as if you might be able to. Sign there. Let's go and find out. This is actually inside the bunker. There is a reproduction of a V2 rocket. Which would have been fired from a launcher there. Straight out into the atmosphere. And we have various people who worked here. René Fonson, request of his longtime friend, leader of the Allied France Resistance Network, was taken on in June 1943 as a labourer. For 3 months he provided precise data and photographs that were transmitted to the Allies, leading to the bombing on the 27th of August 1943. Brave man. Ernest Ransom, shopkeeper in Epelec, helped 24 Belgian prisoners escape. When it was blown up, he provided them with civilian clothes and accompanied them at night on the right road. Henri Roger, Albert Holland and Albert Merlier went to rescue aviator William Hanna, who had been injured in a parachute jump. I hid him in a grain bin. A nurse from the Red Cross, who never stopped complaining from the Germans, often at risk of her life, to the conditions of the various people that were working here. All brave people, all brave people. Quite a good final shot of the blockhouse and the V1 and V2 together of this tour of the blockhouse at Epelec. Now we're off to the campsite at Chateau Ganspet. Bye.